Welcome to part 2 of What You See from the Front Lines. If you haven't listened to part 1, stop, go back, and listen to that first. Trust me, this segment will be more impactful if listened to in order.
Warning. This podcast features the truth about owning and operating mobile home parks. The following program is not designed to be sexy. It will not hype you up on MHPs. Rather, this is a raw take on this industry and how you find your own path to success. Welcome to MHP IRL, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, with your host, Ryan Norris.
About a week before I left for my freshman year at Wake Forest University, I took one of the most important exams of my life. It was my black belt test. 13 years later, most of my memory from that day is fuzzy. I recall it actually being fairly routine. I was absolutely nervous because I was in front of all my friends and in front of my sensei, and I knew if I failed, I probably wouldn't have a second chance to get my black belt again for months, if not years. The one part I thought was going to do me in were the throws. You see, I've always been a beanpole. I'm 6 feet tall, and at the time, I was about 160 pounds soaking wet. Seriously, a gust of wind would have knocked me over. I've just never been a strong dude, and to make matters worse, the guy who volunteered to be tossed by me was bigger and clearly wanted to make me earn my black belt. As you can guess, I muffed the throw. Big time. Seriously, it was very embarrassing. My sensei demanded I try again. Thankfully, he's being merciful to me, I thought, but in retrospect, he was testing me. He wanted to see how I reacted to pressure, failure, and to see if I could recall a specific lesson he had taught me, which I did. The lesson he wanted me to demonstrate knowledge of was that if you're about to toss someone bigger than you, and you think he's going to give you trouble during the toss, hit him! Imagine this. This volunteer is expecting me to do a specific throw with a specific technique, and he has it in his mind he is going to make it difficult for me again. And then, wham! Now he's in shock, and the throw's easy for me, and I'm met with little resistance. I was awarded my black belt that day. For the record, the volunteer profusely apologized to me, and yes, a strong gust could probably still knock me over. My sensei afterwards asked me how I felt. Apart from the sense of accomplishment and I can't believe it's over and other standard responses you'd expect, I found myself saying something to the effect of, I guess I don't feel like a black belt. Forgive me because I'm paraphrasing something I barely remember from 13 years ago, but my sensei replied with something to the effect of, this test felt routine to you. Yes. That's because you are now a master of the basics. A black belt doesn't mean you can nail a 360-degree roundhouse kick. It means you don't have to think about the basics. You can just do them. For your 3rd-degree black belt, then we can worry about those fancy kicks. Chapter 1, Unconscious Competence. In the journey of achieving a black belt in any martial art, you go through the process of unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to unconscious competence to finally arrive at conscious competence. By about month 6 in my mobile home park frontline experience, in retrospect, unconscious competence was the approximate stage I was in at that time. La Costa was a well-oiled machine by then. In 6 months, we had met a lot of connectors and local influencers, become somewhat conversational in Spanish, built a solid team of fix-it people, filled all vacancies, monetized vacant pads with about 20 RVs, corralled collections, fixed roads, light fixtures, trees, and so on and so on. I could take a deep dive into so many things for unconscious competence, but I think the most important is how to handle people. You see, this is a collections business, and the most important activity is depositing rent into the bank. Having a property where everybody pays on time is an unrealistic pipe dream, but also not as lucrative. Think about the credit card industry. Sad as it may be, credit cards only make more profit when people don't pay on time. And the same applies for you as a mobile home park owner. So long as you collect enough to make your bills from the on-time payers, those late fees you inevitably collect will pad your revenues, so long as you don't dip into court costs and other collections-related expenses. The art in the collections industry is being able to find those people who will pay late, but will pay, and will pay without becoming expensive bad debt. Let's begin. Evictions and threats of non-renewal. After speaking face-to-face with everyone with a balance, we had a plan for each of them to catch up. Eventually you learn actions speak louder than words, and some people can perform and some people are just talk. It turns out no pay, no stay isn't that simple, especially if they own their own home. Here are some awful things people will say to you during collections. You're making me homeless because I can't go anywhere else. You haven't fixed blank, so therefore I don't have to pay you. You wouldn't accept my payment because you want me out. By the way, people who say that are people who are trying to partially pay, and they will always use this tactic because they know they can continue to live with a balance, as you cannot evict someone that you have accepted a partial payment from. So many people use this, but at the same time, it is actually lucrative for you because as long as they're paying, but paying late, that's higher revenue for you. But again, it's a fine line because these folks are likely never going to get caught up. And if you let them get too far behind, at that point in time, you start losing money. More on how to handle people like that in a little bit. Back your bark with a bite. Sometimes a threat is all people need to fall in line. Sometimes you don't have a choice and you must evict or non-renew someone. Word spreads fast. If you evict someone who hasn't paid, the others will usually fall in line pretty quickly. You'll find if you're tough and back your words up, most people will eventually leave or fall in line. Negotiations. We have paid people to leave. I actually always offer folks this option, but it is rarely taken up. Hey, listen, you're a month or two behind. What if I dismiss the eviction case, give you your security deposit back, and I erase your balance, and we just call it even, you move on? This line is almost always met with, oh, I'm gonna pay you. But again, actions speak louder than words. A lot of these folks are, to their detriment, overly optimistic, delusional, and stubborn. Like I've mentioned before, a lot of people don't even realize they're lying because they're lying to themselves. The good news is that some people are rational, and you can actually work something out with them. To date, we have had more people leave peacefully than via eviction court. Sometimes you just have to put your ego to the side and let people win a small battle so you can win the larger war. For example, a tenant leaves your park-owned home a mess, but you still pay them the full security deposit. Yeah, they don't deserve it. Yeah, you lost the battle, but they're gone. Now you can replace them with someone who pays and abides by the rules. You lose a battle to win the war. Handling tenants. The best way to handle tenants is to be firm, direct, respectful, and when possible, friendly. I have experimented. I have tried being overly friendly, but this results in people not taking you seriously. I have tried being overly mean, but this results in a breakdown of vital communication between parties. I have tried being rational and presenting logical arguments, but people will always think of themselves as the good guy and you the bad guy, and they'll come up with some insanely illogical arguments and then act entitled. I've tried using humor. Humor, by the way, is the perfect medium to deliver bad news. It makes the environment safe, it allows people to save face, but at the same time, humor also forces people to confront reality. That being said, people still create their own reality. Humor may make conversations more pleasant, but ultimately you are battling stubbornness and delusions. All you can realistically hope to do is influence their perception of that reality. So how do you combat these delusions? By being direct and firm and repetitive. You must have the courage to be confrontational when necessary. You must have the character not to argue back with people. You just have to sound like a broken record and then not be afraid to use the legal leverage that you have as a landlord. A lot of times, you just won't win the persuasion battle. They'll be so stubborn in their delusions that you'll find you're left with no option but to evict or non-renew. Sure, they'll walk away thinking you're the bad guy even though they were the ones not paying you rent, but who cares? You can't help those people. There are too many good people out there that you can help, not to worry about the people you can't help. Get the duds out and find the good, hardworking people you can bring serious value to. As a side note, I have had people who, after being evicted, tell me they were acting the entire time. They knew exactly what was coming. They just didn't think I would actually kick them out. Talk about convincing. Some folks are shockingly calculated and skillful at deception. Con artists are right under your nose. Some people are what I called barnacles, named after the impossible to scrape off organisms that inevitably grow on the side of your boat. These people don't pay consistently, don't follow rules, and don't have any interest in leaving. But here's the kicker. Sure, they do a lot of negative stuff, but they don't do enough to actually get kicked out. They'll pay late, but they'll pay. Or worse, they'll pay a few dollars short. They'll cut their grass, but only when you find them. Then next month, they won't cut it at all. You'll think they've learned that you are the boss, and now they're acting well, but then in a moment's notice, they're back to square one. You can't change people. Just don't try. Just be firm, direct, and consistent. And make a judgment call, because these folks, like I said before with late fees, can actually be more lucrative with those late fees and fines for disobeying the rules. But you walk a seriously fine line, as their misconduct could permeate to other tenants and spread like a cancer. The point of unconscious competence is that you're good, but you don't know it. When you start getting in the zone, the silence is the loudest indicator that you've arrived. Putting out fires before they even begin is the mark of someone who truly knows what they're doing. Humans are creatures of habit, so much so that habit experts essentially argue that we don't have freedom of will, but rather we have freedom of will not. That's essentially just saying that our bodies do so much via subconscious processes that really we as decision makers are just inhibitors and not initiators. So how does that apply here? Well, when you're proficient, you have simply just created the right habits and your body actions on them without you really having to use that much brain power. Think about the first time you brushed your teeth or drove a car. Have you ever driven home and walked in the front door and freaked out because you totally don't remember driving home? That's unconscious competence. That's what my sensei was looking for. How effortless I made the basics look. You can't throw a 360-degree roundhouse kick unless you can first throw a roundhouse kick without thinking. Your active memory is limited. So if that bucket is full trying to throw a roundhouse kick, you won't have the brain processing capacity to successfully execute the jump. You need freedom of will not. Now, there's no podcast or literature or TV program that can build these habits for you. You just have to go out and do it over and over and over again. Chapter 2. Conscious Competence. It wasn't until the former manager of La Costa commented on how quickly I moved and resolved issues that I realized I was likely on the cusp of conscious competence. We purchased a similar, albeit much smaller opportunity around 9 months after closing on La Costa. I recall having trouble sleeping the night before because I didn't know if the bet we made would pay off, and I let anxiety and doubt creep in just like my first day of La Costa. But by the end of the first week, that fear had long since been replaced with confidence. We executed the same strategy we did at La Costa and had the property stable and full within 3 months. Back of the napkin math would suggest we possibly doubled the value of that property in probably under 90 days. These skills I had cultivated by throwing myself head first into this property had resulted in the formation of the right habits, which freed up processing capacity to allow for me to start making more complicated decisions. I understood the roundhouse kick, so now I could pair it with a jump. The crazy thing is, I know people who had a chance to buy this same property for less than what I bought it for. So why would anyone have passed on this opportunity to double your money? I'll reference the story Sam Klein told during my interview with him, which was about the property he showed for what felt like was 100 times before that woman saw, executed, and succeeded in boosting the value big time. All because she had a keen eye and an ability to do what others couldn't or wouldn't do. In short, we were willing to roll up our sleeves and do the work. Others weren't. Or others just didn't see what we saw. So what does that mean for you? Find an opportunity where you could provide value others did not. Then inject your value add. And boom. Profit. For us, it was the willingness to sacrifice our lifestyles to live at a property and put in mega hours on site, and then apply those skills we developed from the front lines onto other properties. Can you learn this business remotely? Yes, absolutely. Like I said earlier, we had actually closed on 2 properties prior to La Costa. We had already been property owners for 9 months. The thing is, even with 2 properties under our belts, we still really had no idea what we were doing or what we signed up for. In retrospect, we left an embarrassingly high amount of value on the table with our first 2 properties, and we were clueless until just recently. The best proxy for what I'm trying to say is going to university. Can you achieve a college degree without attending classes? Yeah, absolutely. Libraries provide you essentially all the materials you need. But is it practical? No, absolutely not. Why? Because odds are you aren't going to have the discipline to teach yourself the way devoting full-time effort to attending class at an actual accredited university does. Very few people do. So, no, you won't learn as fast, if at all, without being there, on the front lines, absorbing everything you can. Not to mention, you miss out on the trust building if you never show up. I can't tell you how many potential issues we avoided because we weren't afraid to jump in the car and go and talk to people face to face. But what if you don't have the ability to just drop everything and go and learn from the front lines? Then don't. We didn't at first. But realize you will leave money on the table. You will be paying for that knowledge gap whether it is to a third-party management company or missing opportunities on your own properties, or worse, missing out on a killer deal that's right in front of your face. Let's go full circle. Back to part 1 of this 2-part episode. Is being able to draft a good pro forma important? Of course, finance minds. But a pro forma is just a set of calculations based on a set of assumptions. So your pro forma is only as good as your assumptions. Let me repeat this. Your pro forma is only as good as your assumptions. If you lack intimate knowledge of the asset, your assumptions won't be that great. And if you're paying a third-party management company instead of learning from your asset, you are paying a price heavier than the monthly checks you write to them. You're missing deals. After discovering someone passed up on the property I doubled the value on in 90 days, I frantically looked back on deals that I passed on over the years. I figured that, knowing what I know now, there are definitely some properties I shouldn't have passed on. Truth be told, I find myself saying I'd still pass on essentially every single one. The excuse I find myself making is something along the lines of, well, at the time I couldn't have executed. Or I didn't have the connections then, and so on, which all boiled down to the fact that I didn't have the experience then that I do now. But that's just an excuse. Ultimately, I'm just shielding my own ego from a bruise. At the same time, I shouldn't be hard on myself. And neither should you. Because mastering a skill comes with frequent oversights and failures. The white belt must make a series of mistakes en route to obtaining their black belt. And sometimes, making a mistake in front of all of your friends, all of the instructors, in an embarrassingly epic fashion is okay, so long as it's paired with perseverance and the humility to admit, hey, this guy is bigger than me, and I can't realistically execute this throw conventionally. So I'm going to put my ego to the side and do something unconventional to achieve the ultimate goal. So when people ask me, what is it like going from 0 properties to 1? I answer that it's really the same thing as imagining redoing high school now that I'm an adult. High school was awkward. I thought it was cool. I wasn't. I thought I knew everything. I didn't. I was drinking from a fire hose. I could think back to a million little things I would have done differently knowing what I know now back in high school. But high school is over now. I couldn't be where I am today without having gone through the growing pains of high school. So what was it like going from 0 properties to 1? It was cringeworthy, just like high school. Going from 2 properties to 3 was like going from freshman year to sophomore year. Yeah, sure, I know a bit more, but it's still awkward. Just like high school, I had to go through mobile home park ownership and make the mistakes I did to get to where I am today. There was just no substitute. And I'm going to continue to make mistakes and grow from them until the day I retire from this industry. Maybe sleeping on an air mattress to learn the industry in a compressed format isn't an option for you like it was for me. But I'll push you to remember high school. I'll take away the objection that you own a couple parks, so you're knowledgeable, because I did, and I wasn't. If you hadn't already guessed what my game-changing takeaway was for this second part of the 2-part episode, let me be more direct. You're missing deals. The message I would love to deliver to my former self is that knowledge and skill gaps come with significant price tags that aren't always in the form of bills. Go attain that intimate knowledge as fast as possible. Moreover, in entrepreneurship, you really can't be a one-trick pony. You'll wear many hats by necessity. So yes, being a strong finance mind helps, But not if that's all you got. It's like the game Oregon Trail, where you start by picking your occupation, be it doctor or farmer or whatever. And for said discipline, you obtain discounts and avoid issues, but then you face issues for skills you don't have. Say, for example, you select doctor so your family recovers quicker from ailments, but then you pay a higher price for wagon parts and repairs. To conclude, mobile home parks have been branded as easy passive investments. They aren't. You need to build the requisite skills like any other discipline. Otherwise, you'll miss opportunities right in front of your face, both to buy new properties and extract value from assets you already own. We all had our cringeworthy moments in high school. We are all due our cringeworthy moments in mobile home parks. Go out and fail your way to success. Would having my due diligence list help you? If so, I will let you have it for free. That's right, my list that took me 3 years to develop and includes plenty of fixes for mistakes that I made that now you can avoid. All absolutely free. All I ask for in exchange is leave me a 5-star review and a comment. Screenshot your comment after it goes live and email it to me at my website, archimedesgrp.com. Afterwards, let's connect. This episode was inspired by a listener just like you. Even if you don't have any ideas for future episodes, let's still connect, as I'm sure there are ways you and I can help each other out. I'm looking forward to chatting soon.